Hi everyone, welcome to CoinGecko's 19th virtual meetup. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Zong. I'm the head of research here at CoinGecko. Before we begin, let me just take this opportunity to first thank KuCoin for being the sponsor of our meetup today. So how this meetup is going to work is we're going to break this up into two sessions. So the first part is going to be me going through our Q1 2022 crypto report that we just published recently. After that, I'll be turning it around to our co-founder, Bobby. He's going to moderate a session with three distinguished guests on the topic of what's next for music NFTs. So thank you all for joining us today. So without further ado, let me just quickly jump in straight into the report. You can obviously find this already on our website. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing today, but just go through what are the key points and the key takeaways that we had for this quarter. So as you can see from the chart, and I'm sure you guys are well familiar, the crypto market in Q1 2022 really took a dip before sort of recovering at the end of March to sort of make a round trip to where it started the year in January 2022. The slide really was sort of a continued one since hitting its all-time high in November, and only like I mentioned at the end of March, in the last 2 weeks of March, pretty much it sort of recovered. As you could expect, this is probably due to larger, broader global geopolitical and macroeconomic factors, right? So the Russian invasion of Ukraine, things like high inflation numbers, the Feds and other central banks considering rate hikes, right? All these do impact the crypto market, and you're seeing the impact of this in Q1 2022. But I think what's good to know probably is the market seems to have been resilient and weathered some of these challenges quite well so far, right? Since these are broad, large macro events, you would see that most of the coins have sort of moved in tandem with the overall market, right? So, relative share of, Bitcoin and Ethereum are still largely similar at 47% and 21.4% respectively. Really, the only one to buck the trend is Luna, right? In the top 10, which gained about 24% throughout Q1 2022. Unfortunately, there were a few that dropped out of the top 30, FTM, OKB, Phantom, OKB, and Uni, while FTT, ETC, and Waves sort of broke into the top 30. I think for Phantom, FTM, you're going to see, even though the token, the value of the token itself, and the market cap has fallen out of the top 30, within the DeFi section, you're going to see that its TVL has actually largely remained the same, which I think it's quite encouraging for the project and for the chain since Andre left. Right? Waves have now fallen out of the top 30, right? And I think with Ethereum Classic, you might see some more activity there, given that I think a lot of Ethereum miners are sort of beginning to more aggressively move their mining activities across to Ethereum Classic as Ethereum moves closer towards the merge and sort of move towards proof of stake. As I already mentioned, I think Luna was the top gainer at 24% within the top 10. You see some highlights, which are people like Rune, FTT, Leo, and GMT, which sort of were green. But I think overall, you can see from the chart that most of the other coins remain in red. From the top 5 perspective, only BTC and XRP sort of were more resilient, whereas Ethereum, BNB, and Solana all saw dips during the first quarter. Yeah. Shout out, I think, to GMT, to Stephen, right? If you haven't heard now, I'm sure you guys have already heard. Like this is one of the first, if not the first, sort of move to earn game that has sort of broken into the wider consciousness, right? Even though Axie has taken a dip. Well, just as Axie has taken a dip, right, and sort of have captured the imagination of everyone. The token really only launched in March, right, early March, and sort of by the end of the quarter, it's already been up 14x as more and more people get into Move to Earn. There are obviously other similar projects that are coming up, right? So watch out for people like Genopats, Uocho, and you can read more about Move to Earn on CoinGecko Buzz as well. This is quite interesting, and I think is sort of broadly in line with what we saw as well. What I mentioned at the top of when I started this presentation, which is crypto has sort of moved increasingly similar to the traditional equities markets. You can see the top 30 crypto market cap has moved almost in tandem, I would say, with the S&P 500, right? With a high correlation of 0.72 since the turn of the year in January, right? Before that, in Q4 2021, it was only about 0.3 correlation, right? You can also see that Bitcoin's correlation is also largely similar, so showing that the asset class our crypto market cap is sort of moving more and more closely together with the equities market. There could be a few reasons for this, but I think chiefly is because the mix of investors that that have entered to the market, and the mix of investors that we see now in the crypto market has largely changed from the early years of being very retail heavy to having more and more institutional and having more and more sophisticated investors enter into the market. So when this happens, I think for these institutionals and large investors, they probably do consider crypto as a risk-on asset, right? And and sort of perhaps even a risk-on asset that is even more risky than traditional equity. And so when macroeconomic conditions go against risk-on asset classes, you'll see correspondingly decline and it sort of move in tandem with other risk-on assets. So perhaps the segment of the market that made the most gains this in Q1 2022 are stable coins. I think all this macroeconomic and geopolitical instability and uncertainness have sort of helped push stable coins up and continue to grow from a market cap perspective. Clearly not from a price perspective, right? So market cap, I think, for stable coins have sort of gained by close to 13%, right? Within Q1 2022 alone, right? Even though Tether is still in the lead, I think its lead is starting to shrink significantly, and you can see at the bottom that it didn't add as much market cap compared to the rest of its competitors, right? UST from Luna is on Terra is the biggest winner, I guess, the biggest gainer from a percentage perspective at 61%, right? And sort of, but if you look at from an absolute number perspective, I think USDC is still the one that added the most in 9.92 billion market cap in terms of absolute raw absolute number. Yeah. I think UST, you probably know, has sort of been driven by a lot of on-chain factors, right? Luna has also outperformed the market. With Anchor's continued 20% yield for USD, I think it's sort of become a very attractive, I think, place for crypto people and maybe even new people coming into the market looking for yield to sort of park their funds in a relatively safe and sort of stable yielding place. Yeah. We did a deep dive on UST in this presentation, in this report this quarter, and sort of I think I'm just gonna quickly highlight that the other thing going for UST, I think, is the fact that the Luna Foundation Guard, the LFG, have continued to support, I guess, the growth of the stable coin by periodically rebalancing the pools, starting to purchase BTC to protect the peg. And I think recently now they've also gotten into a partnership with Avalanche to also start buying AVAX to sort of protect the USD peg. So all this is probably good news for USD holders, right? And hopefully increasing the diversity of the underlying assets that protect USD will reduce the risk of USD itself, right? And protect the peg if it comes into stressful market conditions. From an Ethereum perspective, I think probably the biggest news is obviously the success of the Kiln testnet, right? Merging, right? And that was also somewhere close to end of March, right? And I think sort of with this positive news coming out of Ethereum, it's actually driven a lot more people to stake their Ethereum into the network, right? As people prepare for like the actual merge itself. Obviously, more recently, there's been more good news, right? I think a shadow chain has been deployed for the consensus layer, and we'll continue to see this number grow. But just within Q1 2022 alone, we saw a 25% increase in the total Ethereum staked in the network itself. This represents about 9% of total ETH supply. I believe the number is now closer to 10 to 11% of total ETH supply, which is now staked for Ethereum 2.0, right? Cricket and Lido still lead as the top two staking services. This number is by validator count, where they are sort of neck and neck, but Lido really has been the largest beneficiary and has been able to sort of amass significant amounts of ETH staked into its service, right? The merge is estimated to happen now, not in June, right? If you guys have been following this, I think the devs have sort of come out to say that it won't be in June, but it won't be long now, possibly in Q3 or early Q4, possibly. And I think when that happens, we're gonna have to see where that takes the Ethereum network. I think certainly we're all hoping that it will be able to scale much better, and gas fees will come down. I think from emissions perspective, I think Ethereum is going to reduce its emissions. I think this is confirmed now, from 12,000 ETH to about only 1,280 ETH a day, right? So that's an almost 90% reduction in ETH emissions. So there are talks that this could make ETH even more deflationary than what it is today. Let's talk a bit about DeFi TVL. I think this is quite interesting as well. You'll see that obviously total TVL has sort of declined by about 14%, in line with the overall market, right? Experiencing a rough Q1 2022. I think nonetheless, there are some interesting developments. You'll see Ethereum's dominance over TVL starting to decrease, right? From about 67% back in October to now 54% in March 2022. Like I already mentioned, I think for EVM chains, Avalanche and BSC are still hanging on to the lead. They're almost neck and neck now, but Phantom has largely retained its market share despite all the rocky Q1 2022. Terra has grown, perhaps fueled by UST as well, and it's now 10% of the market. However, I think Solana has sort of seen the decline since October since end 2021. One interesting thing to point out is when we compile this, we sort of don't take the full one, but take some of the top chains, and we start to see DeFi chains have squeezed into our list, right? I guess perhaps a sign that it's that DeFi on Bitcoin is starting to gain a bit more traction. The second deep dive that we did for our report this quarter is a report on cross-chain bridges. I won't elaborate too much on this, but I think it's safe to say that if you have been using or interacting with blockchains at all, at some point now, you probably have interacted with bridges in the last few months, right? As you move between different chains, right? So I think for most people, they're probably using a centralized exchange, maybe like Binance or FTX to sort of move tokens around different chains. But I think it's we're the crypto community, right? We would prefer if there are decentralized cross-chain bridges and solutions that cater to this need, right? It's not been an easy path. I think bridges have been one of the key targets or the key victims of hacks in the last few months, right? I think within Q1 2022 alone, about $1 billion worth of coins, tokens have been hacked from bridges, right? But nonetheless, I think at the same time, TVL and these bridges have sort of started to grow. I think what's also encouraging is that the technology itself is also improving, right? So we really started with point-to-point bridges between two specific chains, but now we're looking and we're seeing the emergence of more generalized sort of solutions that can go across different chains. And I think it's a very interesting space for people to pay attention to see how this is going to evolve in the future, because it looks increasingly like a multi-chain future is pretty much on the cards for the crypto industry. NFTs, I think this is quite interesting. I think if you look at the trading volume chart for January, February, and March, you'll see that it actually spiked up in January and sort of tapered off in February and March. We saw a coincide very closely with which is sort of opposite of what the broader crypto market cap that I was talking about earlier, right? So there's a theory, I guess, that a theory and a narrative that a lot of people who sort of tried to de-risk and get out of cryptos have sort of moved their assets into NFTs, in January and February before the market sort of started to heat up again in March, and then they sort of really rotated their money out of NFTs again into crypto itself. I think from a share perspective, I think it should be unsurprising that Ethereum is still the main dominant chain, even though we are seeing other people catch up as well. Surprisingly, I think Avalanche has sort of started to catch up as a NFT sort of chain, while I guess with the Ronin bridge hack at the end of last quarter, Ronin has sort of lost quite a fair bit of market share. But that's not all that happened. I think just to quickly talk through this, I think for NFTs, it's still a nascent and emerging space, right? And we're still seeing interesting things emerge. I think there is no bigger news for NFTs than the acquisition of CryptoPunks and Meebits by Yuga Labs, right? Which are also the founders behind Bored Ape Yacht Club. I think that for us that's a very exciting development. I think it shows that people are willing to value NFTs as sort of interesting IPs, right? And I think we're going to be very interested to see what does Yuga Labs eventually do with CryptoPunks and Meebits, as well as together with Bored Ape Yacht Club and its other NFTs. I think a whole game and entertainment sort of push that sort of emerged after the acquisition. So it'll be interesting to see whether that gains traction or not. And in line with that, I think Yuga Labs also dropped 8 coins, which is quite interesting for its Bored Ape Yacht Club and Mutant Ape sort of holders, right? Which caused quite a stir in the market. Whether there's actual utility or whether there's going to be actual utility for this 8 coins remains to be seen. But I think you're going to see that for NFTs with strong brands, they're going to start also moving towards being not being just a pretty picture, but going to provide more utility for their holders as well. Lastly, I think this is quite interesting, where OpenSea, like we said, has been the dominant marketplace for a long time now. But I think more and more we're seeing people create their own NFT marketplaces as well that caters for their own assets and their own NFTs. So you see this a lot with games, right? Axie Infinity and Avegochi have their own sort of trading marketplaces. But I think asset-specific NFT marketplaces are going to emerge. Also, I think there's some speculation that Yuga might eventually build their own, given that they own a few of these blue chip assets now. Finally, from a volume perspective, I think from a decentralized exchange and centralized exchange trading volume perspective, you'll see that definitely it's taken a dip in January, between January to March, given all the uncertainties in the market. It's quite a big dip, 37.8%, right? We think that this will probably recover as the market recovers as well. Not much to say about centralized exchanges, but I think definitely from a decentralized exchange perspective, it's been quite an interesting quarter as well. You see from this slide, so even though it took a bit of a small dip at 8.5% in terms of trading volume, Uniswap, I think you're going to see has sort of taken over from market share perspective. I think between Uniswap V2 and V3 together, they are now more than 54% of the market. Yeah. In contrast, I think a lot of the other names that you would recognize, PancakeSwap, SushiSwap, and TraderView, have all seen significant declines of market share in Q1 2022. The other large gainer actually is Serum on Solana. That's all I have for you guys today. I think just wanted to shout out a few things that have been happening on the CoinGecko end. Firstly, it's GeckoCon. Obviously, if you've attended end of last year, you'll know that this is our premier conference that we organized. This year is going to be 14th or 15th of July. I'm sure you guys have seen it already on our social media. If you haven't gotten a ticket yet, you can click on the link or go to the website conference.coingecko.com to get a ticket. Please do join us. It's on the 14th and 15th of July, and we're going to talk about the decentralized future. The second thing just wanted to shout out from our end is that you probably also noticed by now that we have rolled out a new mobile app with a ton of new features and new UI. I think a lot of the things that you guys have been asking for in terms of P&L, tracking P&L and the portfolio and candlesticks charts have also been implemented into the app itself, along with support for 20+ languages. So if you haven't seen it, if you haven't tried it, please go to your app store and download it. It's available both on iOS and Google Play. And if you like it, do feel free to leave us feedback, give us comments, and we'll make sure to take that into account when we further develop the app. So thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation. As I mentioned, I hope you found this useful. You can always check out the full report on our website. Now let me turn it over to Bobby.
Hello everyone! It's so good to be back! GeckoCon NFTs Gone Wild was a blast, and we can't wait to up the ante with, wait for it, GeckoCon, the decentralized future! We have a treat planned for you to welcome the advent of Web3. Decentralization is more than a buzzword. It's the future of World Wide Web, with the mission of putting the power of the internet in the hands of the people. Just like last year, we're gonna bring together thought leaders and innovators from across the globe to bring you insights into the creative economy, finance, governance, business, and more in our multi-metaverse event spanning 2 days. You can expect premium content and discussions in a series of keynotes, panel discussions, and workshops. Be sure to book your tickets. For more updates, visit our website. Hope to see you there.
Hey guys, yeah, we are here for the second session of the Meetup number 19. And today we have three awesome guests with us today. We have Jimi Frew, head of music and co-founder Emanate. We have Achilleas, product manager at Async Music, and we have Vandal, founder at DAORecords. For those of you who don't know, my name is Bobby. I'm the co-founder and COO at CoinGecko, and for today's team, we'll be talking about what's next for music NFTs. So, and music NFTs is like the next big thing that will be going out, and we have three experts to talk to us about it today. So let's get going, guys. So maybe I'll invite you guys, three of you, to briefly introduce yourself and tell us about what you guys do in the crypto space. Wendy, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Vandal. My mother calls me Jason. I'm originally a hip-hop artist from Canada. I spent a long time living in Malaysia, stumbled into the crypto space in around 2017 and fell in love with NFTs around the end of 2019. And we formed DAORecords, which was a bridge from the traditional music industry into the Web3 music industry. And since then, we've been experimenting with NFTs, specifically around creating an ecosystem for music, as well as onboarding and building community. And since then, it's just been a wild ride down the rabbit hole. And I'm sure as many of us here can attest to, it's been quite the exciting journey. And I'm so thankful for being here. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, CoinGecko. Thank you, everyone, for having me.
Jimmy, do you want to go next?
Yeah, well, yeah, thanks for having me, and hi to Vandal and Achilleas. I hope that's how you pronounce your name. I've probably butchered it. But yeah, I'm Jimi Frew, and I've had a background for 12 years in music. I've basically been a musician half my life. And for the last 4 years, I've been working on a Web3 music platform called Emanate. And we're set to help both music creators and fans and offer exciting ways to collect, share, and monetize and distribute the music that you love, and also empower users to build and engage a community that really matters to them. We believe you should be rewarded for creating the music you're passionate about, sharing the music you're passionate about, and investing in what you're passionate about. So that's me in a nutshell. And yeah, grateful to be here and excited for the conversation.
Achilleas?
Hi, everyone. I'm Achilleas. I wonder if it's a coincidence that all three of us music folk have facial hair. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. There's something there. So I'm doing project with Async art. In particular, focusing on music. So what we're trying to build is a seamless but granular creator tooling. That means that you're able to go from like ideation to launching an NFT, music NFT that's sort of crypto native, right? So that leverages the power of the blockchain, not just for distribution, but also for creative methods and use cases. And then also we're trying to establish partnerships that allow you to then display this NFT or make it live in all sorts of different places, from displays to different merch partnerships. So like a one-stop shop for musicians or music collectives and artists to sort of go from ideation to like launching a collection in the most seamless but yet granular way possible.
That's awesome to hear. So I guess my one of first, I mean, we've started seeing like how in crypto, like it kind of moved in trends. Like in 2020, we saw DeFi going mainstream. 2021, we saw NFTs, in particular PFP and art-based NFTs taking the world by storm. However, we haven't really seen the hype hitting the music NFTs yet. You know, when NFTs took off last year, it was mainly art, PFP, to some extent game items, but music NFT has been kind of under the radar. So I'm curious to hear from three of you, like, why do you think that is the case?
I'll go first. Yeah, so I think, I mean, apart from the sort of boring answer, that's the infrastructure is there yet, the sort of, major movements to enable the seamless transaction or creation that's not there yet. I think the main reason is that there's a certain immediacy with visual art, right? Just like kind of strikes you, which allows for like a quicker development of an ecosystem around that. Music is an active creative form, right? You have to be there and sort of like spend 3 minutes of your time or 30 seconds or 5 minutes or however long it is and actively engage with something without doing much else necessarily. So I think that requires a different sort of infrastructure, both on the distribution and the creative side than visual does, which is just an image on your, you can scroll through 100 of them in a minute, right? So I think it's a different, completely different medium. So it will take more time.
Yeah, I would say too is like it's a journey, right? And like it's the obvious visual component that makes some of these things so attractive initially. And maybe it takes a little bit longer for people to kind of grasp the concepts of what an NFT is and where it can be applied. And so like music might not be the first obvious one, but like when you kind of peel away the layers, it becomes really obvious that this is incredibly powerful.
I think if you look at my Twitter feed, it's all about music NFTs. Personally, but with that said, I think that like with the way that NFTs are presented to creators, strictly coming in from the perspective of art, I think a lot of the models that were set forth were presented in the way where visual artists could then mint their NFTs and present them to their audience. And I think that we haven't yet found a vehicle or a method that represents music in the way that it makes sense for music as an art form to be distributed as an NFT. So that would be my perspective.
There are many different kind of genres of music out there. Do you see any particular genre kind of making a big push into music NFTs, or do you kind of see this across the board on all genres? And then an extension, like for your products or at Async Music and Emanate, do you guys focus on any particular genre?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're like pretty focused on only because my background has been heavily in that area, and also my two other co-founders. But like, guys like Vandal are on our platform, and we've got amazing community, a guy, DJ Lethal Skills, who they push like the hip hop rap vibes, and yeah, shout outs. And yeah, we encourage all genres, but what we found interesting is, especially with the Web3 music stuff, is like, I feel like we at least need to focus on one particular kind of realm, and only because historically electronic musicians have that technologically savvy background. So some of these new ideas and new processes aren't completely foreign to them because they're more open to learning about it more.
Yeah, I would second that. Electronic music looks like the more sort of like immediate fit. We don't focus on anything specifically. I think there's interesting applications for all genres. What I have found surprising though is sort of how quickly classical music NFTs populated the space and how well they were received. I think it has something to do with the fact that they were the monetization model is particularly bad in the classical music industry, right? Like, you think labels are bad. Look at the way that classical musicians try to monetize. It's very, very hard. They rely on grants mostly. So being able to do that, I think, was a big push. And also, just the idea of the artifact of classical music as being a very sort of like almost religious experience, I think, lends credence to these things being valuable in a way, maybe at least initially. So I was very surprised by classical music, and we've done a few projects with classical musicians that have been amazing.
That's an interesting approach. Never would have thought that. I mean, electronic sort of kind of expect that, but classical music was kind of a surprise. Wendy, anything you want to add on that, or?
Yeah, no, I was going to say the same thing as Jimmy. Like I think that the DJs and the electronic music producers have a bit more of and they're in the technology a bit more, so they're used to using computers and using programs, and I think for them it's a lot easier to grasp a lot of the things that you use for NFTs and for crypto, whereas like the traditional classic musicians who are using instruments, who are performing live mostly, may not be able to adapt as quickly.
I've got a question next for Achilleas, for Async art in particular. So, I mean, you guys got an interesting product. I mean, for your art image product itself, so you have kind of split the art into multiple layers, and then people can kind of change it, and then a different piece of art comes out. And then you kind of take the same concept and kind of make it into music, where you have different stems, I believe you call it, and then you can kind of change the composition and a different sort of music come out from it. Curious to hear, what was the idea behind this product, and how much traction do you see? A lot of interest in people kind of modifying the different compositions. How does the composition change? Like, can anybody go in and change it, or does it change based on weather, for example?
Yeah, so for Async, sort of one of the fundamental values that drove us towards this interactive creation of music and consumption of music was the idea of intimacy being sort of the reason why a lot of us engage with our favorite artists or musicians, right? We want to feel closer to them in some way. One way you can do that is by actively interacting with what they're producing in a canonical way, where you can update the sort of objective state of a song and you can interact with it and contribute to it. So that was the sort of impetus behind it. What we found as we kept iterating on the product is that there's also something about owning your own unique mix, right, of one of these programmable works, where you feel an added sort of intimacy because you have a musical object in your hands that sort of like no one else does, but stems from an overall collection of similar sounding songs. So we are currently pivoting actually to a new product that we're launching very soon, which we call Music Blueprints. The idea there being that artists still upload stems with different states, but the collector at the end, rather than collecting a state or a stem, collects a unique random combination of the different states together as the artist intended them, right? So what this allows for really is a scalable creation of a collection of unique songs that nonetheless belong under the same umbrella, right? So what we hope to achieve with this is a similar community sense on the musical side that PFPs have actually succeeded in, right? Of course, there's a lot of bad things about PFPs, but one of the good things that they've provided is this feeling of being part of a group. And I think viewing this with music and creativity, I think might be very interesting. So I'd say intimacy would be the main thing, and this is how we're trying to achieve that.
So trying to understand this a little bit further. So like this typical PFP project, we have 10,000 NFTs in a collection, and are you trying to replicate that with this blueprint where there's like a master blueprint and various and different variations of the song, and I don't know, 10,000 music NFTs in that collection, something like that?
I would say so, yeah. So it's what I call like a semi-fungible model, right? Where you have, they're all unique and non-fungible, but they come from the same blueprint, right? So there's some instruction at the beginning where it says there's 10 possible drum tracks here, right? Maybe some of them are 808, some of them are like jazz drums. For example, there's 10 different vocal variations, maybe different lyrics, different perspectives. Do we get drugged by?
Got confident. Yeah, we got robbed by KuCoin. Yeah, sorry about that. All right, I guess we are back up again. Yeah, I think we kind of lost you about that. You see, there's 10 different variations for the drum beats, for example.
Yeah, and for each of the different stems, the creator sort of creates different variations that can range from different melodies, different lyrics, to perhaps different effects, right? So the idea there is that when you create one of these pieces, you're creating a potential of many pieces. You're not doing just one sort of like honing in the work, which I think as a musician myself, starting off doing this is very interesting. Usually when you make music, you go down the specifics. In this case, the further you go along, the more you open up the possibilities. And then eventually you sort of deploy that on chain and collectors mint a unique random combination. So what you achieve is, you have all these different songs that are unique, but nonetheless sound good, right? Because the creator has like thought about the different possible combinations without the original artist putting in the work to create 1,000 different songs. So they're able to capture a sort of very good economic value. I think economically makes sense, right? In the same way that PFPs sometimes make sense, while also maintaining the underlying creative integrity. And again, creating this community ethos, right? Like I have this version, my vocals are like reverby, maybe they're more rare. Your vocals maybe like are the female vocalist, for example, and we can sort of even trade them, right? So it creates this collectible nature for music. And I think it's a quite interesting product that we want to experiment with.
It's a bit similar, but I guess not very similar. But it reminds me of Euler beats a little bit. But it kind of randomly gets generated via the hash, and then there's multiple, duplicates of that. I suppose you have the 101, and then, but yeah. Okay. Curious to hear from the three of you. Actually, you guys are all musicians. Have you guys personally released music NFTs into the market under your name, for example? When do you
Guess I'll
go?
jump on this
have
one.
you released with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've released a bunch. The latest one is like what you see behind me here. It's the Rare Vandal, and the Rare Vandal is a cross-chain release. Initially, I intended to release it across 6 chains. I think that the reasoning for that is really about the idea of interoperability and connecting with audiences who participate in the various marketplaces and platforms that are on the different chains that are out there. And of course, I'm also on Emanate, I'm on Tamago, I'm on Audius, like in terms of streaming stuff. And I think that just getting my music out there. I have a large back catalog as well, which I'm gradually, slowly releasing as the Rare Vandal, which I kind of had changed my name from Vandal to the Rare Vandal, given the nature of the space. And it's just been really exciting to be able to experiment. And I think that, like given the Web 2 industry model, there is no experimentation. You just simply, release like a formulaic, put it out, get it out there across all the platforms and do your promo. And here we can do something very interesting and use the metaverse spaces like CryptoVoxels or Reality Chain or NearHub, for example, as a place where people can congregate and listen to the music and interact with it, as well as then go to the various platforms across the chains to purchase the NFT.
I mean, my first foray into the NFT space was actually a release I did with my band early last year. We're working on it since August 2020, so fairly early on, I think. Although we released in the sort of when the hype was happening. I started off in DeFi. That was my sort of crypto segue. Discovered NFTs, discovered music NFTs, and I was like, this makes so much sense in so many levels. And so that was the beginning, and I liked it so much that I thought I'd sort of do more of that. And less of my own music, although I still continue to make music as well, of course.
Jimmy,
Yeah,
have you
for me,
released anything yourself?
I have. I mean, my focus hasn't been on music creation for a number of years, since the beginning of Emanate, really. I'm really focused now on like giving back and helping people who might be aspiring creators themselves to kind of show them that this new stuff can change the game. But yeah, I have got I've minted some audio NFTs of my sort of passion project. But one of the exciting things that we've done is a bit more of an experiment. Was we helped Deadmau5 into the NFT space back in December 2019, and also Weezer, another band, and not so much audio NFTs. Like these were more sort of multimedia style things and collectible cards, but what that did lead to for them is like a full immersion into this space now. So yeah.
So I mean, one of the benefits, I mean, the narrative, the advantages that we talk a lot about Web3 is that it's about this intermediating the middleman, and it's just in the music industry, it's all about the record labels. The record labels take have a lot of power, cream a lot of the profits. We start seeing artists going independent, but at the same time, labels still hold tremendous power because they kind of control the distribution of the music. Curious to hear, like, do you think music NFTs will help accelerate the trend of artists going independent and help flip the balance of power between artists and record labels?
Like the first thing I want to say, like on this topic, is I don't necessarily think all record labels are evil. I think like as long as they're creating value and community and a collective, and it builds strength, like that adds tremendous value. So I think like, defining an independent artist as them by themselves is not quite the same as also including that independent community or label or whatever else. So, now digital music is collectible. Now digital music is tradable. Now digital music is giftable. And this all can be done without like a platform like Apple and Spotify. So in that sense, it's really exciting that like we've sort of shifted, and that stuff's happening now. This isn't what's next for NFTs. This is like now. And so I think that's really exciting. And I think Vandal definitely has some stuff to say about that too.
Yeah. I mean, with DAORecords, it's like we're trying to imagine or reimagine what a record label looks like, and how that is, when it comes to releasing an artist's music. and facilitating this release and onboarding them into the ecosystem, as well as, you know, not being exclusive or say signing artists per se. It's more about being that distribution point and being that onboarding point for artists, and allowing them to get involved in the community, such as like the various DAOs that we've created, so that they can get a sense of what this Web3 space is, and they can get out there and explore and try the different platforms that are available to them. Because, you know, just like all the platforms are just another avenue for an artist to release their music. It's like, just like Spotify is, just like Bandcamp is, like, I don't see why artists can't use those platforms in conjunction with all of these Web3 platforms. But in the end, I think they'll see the benefits of the Web3 platforms over the Web2 ones, until those catch up to where we are now.
I would agree with this. I think the notion of a label is not sort of a priori bad, right? So I've had major label deals that were horrible for me, right? I've had independent record deals that were pretty good. I think, you know, I think there is still a role in a label, even if this space were to become sort of the you know, the sort of most where most music happened, and that is early stage discovery and incubation, right? Which is not how labels work now. In an ideal world, you have a label which sort of steps into the unknown artists, right? Who have sort of an ear for potential, who have this curatorial power and interest and genuine sort of like empowering interest, and would provide some funding for some early stage song creation, for some demos, especially for bands who are not able to do it on their bedroom, right? Some early promotion would take a smaller chunk perhaps of their earnings, and like the 80-90% we're seeing now. And then you can continue crowdsourcing, right? Then you can enter into the DAO arena. I feel like that's the role that labels should be playing. And I feel that that's the role that labels might play once we unlock the economic potential with NFTs, right? There's no reason for you to sign a record deal in perpetuity, which has like 5 option deals, 360, take the money from your merch, etc., for what essentially is an advance for one album, right? Once there's more competition there from crowdfunding and the ability of these tradable tokens, I think that might redefine the role of the label, something that's better for them as well, right? Like it would help the labels out if they, I think it makes more sense as an economic model. This is like early stage focus.
So I'm curious to hear, so I'm not involved with all the intricacies of record labels. Most artists are pretty much signed to record labels. Can they release their songs as music NFTs, or whatever? Can they release things as NFTs at the moment, or do they have to get approval from their record label? And that is one of the big stumbling block from music NFTs taking off.
That depends on how hip their labels are. Yeah, I'm not sure if all labels have a sort of crypto or NFT clause in their contracts, but I think this is something that all artists should explore, whether like in conversation with their label, depending on if it's a major or an independent label. I think that really this is an opportunity. It's just like another opportunity to distribute their music. And I think this is a great way to build community and connect community directly to the artist, as opposed to having these walled gardens as what Spotify and the streaming services are today. And that's like in the way I see it, is bringing music back to the physical format, but in digital. And that's where NFTs are. It's that merger of physical and digital. And I think that's what's really exciting for us to experiment with, and for artists to get out there and ask the questions, talk to their labels, you know, and get out there and mint some music NFTs and maybe ask the question later. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it would all depend on what their deals are. Like some artists might have a single deal versus an album deal or a 10 album deal. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. There's no kind of uniform around it all. But I think, like Vandal said, you need to explore it. And like maybe you as the artist need to prompt or like sort of knock on the door and say, hey guys, like this is going on. And again, like Vandal said earlier, like it shouldn't have to be, you know, replacing your Spotify Web2 strategy. It should be as well as. And and I think like once people really kind of see like there is just an addition to what you can do with your music business that's super valuable, then yeah, the opportunity's there to grab.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of, the stats, like how much artists get paid on Spotify. I mean, it's like 0.003 cent per stream, like basically less than a cent per stream. Like artists are basically getting paid very little for all these things. And I've seen like people like Mike Shinoda saying that he's made a lot more money from selling NFTs than any of them, and then just from Web2, from Spotify, Apple Music, and all. Curious to hear, like, do you see the same story as well? Artists monetizing better from music NFTs, and also curious to hear, do you see artists monetizing more from primary sale or royalty from secondary sale of music NFTs?
I think that music NFTs in a way allows an artist to connect directly with their fan or build a new fan base within this Web3 ecosystem. Through experimentation and various other elements about, let's say you purchase the audio NFT and that gives you access to, say, a live show or other additional perks that artists can include together with their NFT. And to be honest, I don't know, like it's really dependent upon the artist himself and how far they want to take it and to what extent they want to use that NFT to boost their career. And it is really a whole new world. Like you see artists coming into the space who maybe have had like success in the Web 2 realm, but then they come into the Web 3 realm and they see very little success because they think that maybe their audience will port over or people will know who they are, or they're just going to buy the NFT. And I think there's like a whole new strategy that needs to be applied to this Web3 space in general. And I think that's something that artists who are out there, who are listening to this, who are watching this, I think need to think a bit outside of the box when it comes to how they deliver their NFTs. But I think maybe Achilleas and Jimi might have something to add to this.
I mean, I would on the streaming front, I would sort of echo Vandal's description of these things as physical digital objects, right? So, since Napster really, or the early days of piracy, what happened was we unshackled, sort of like we freed the song from its material, sort of like cage, right? Like you were able to these things just move freely online. That's a good thing for the fans, right? Like I pay $10 a month and have access to what I would need to be paying thousands of dollars to get the equivalent vinyls. That's a good thing for the fans. Obviously, it's a bad thing for the artists because now they're the main way people were making money in the 80s and the 90s and the 70s was like vinyl records and CDs, etc. We just alchemically were able to create a new kind of object, right? So like this sort of digital tokenized musical objects are complementary to Spotify. It's a win-win. You get to listen to the song, to any song you want for free. We should not go back to a walled garden, I think, for consumption of music. I think it's a good thing that your song is as free and as available to anyone as possible. At the same time, you can sort of do price discrimination to your fans. The most sort of like, hardcore fans of you will want to buy maybe your one of ones, right? If you get that stage, or, a cheaper sort of bigger collection of music you make. So I think it's a better monetizable model to keep the song free. So streaming, being a sort of like a low barrier entry for fans, whereas providing a more full experience, which is what everyone I think is trying to figure out now what that looks like with tokenized music.
Yeah, like I think throw the number out there of like 1 million streams, right? We've all kind of, well, maybe not all heard of this, but 1 million streams on Spotify might bring you $4,000. Now, that's a lot. And actually, to dig a little bit deeper, the songwriters, if there was one of them, would take $750 of that 4K, right? So like you're kind of looking at this model that is incredibly I guess uneven to the value to the creators. Okay, so the one thing I will say, and this is just a little plug, but currently we pay 10x of what Spotify does. We're on our Web3 streaming platform. And we've seen artists earning more than ever before. Like, so I was just chatting with a young guy in our community that sold, $45 worth of NFTs in a couple of hours, and he just showed me his Spotify stats, and he hadn't ever made that up in a month. So like, it's just that instant access to value that you can offer to your super fans that really want to support you. And that's incredibly valuable. And I think like, if you can turn 1,000 fans to 100 that like are just waiting for whatever you drop, or maybe it's more than that. But the point is, there's a direct relationship there with people that do want to get behind you and support your career, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically what we're seeing is the internet's kind of enabling all the direct communication. That's kind of what we saw with Twitter, with Instagram, like the artists being able to communicate directly with their fans, and now they could directly monetize via music NFTs, for example. I'm curious to hear, like you mentioned songwriter early just now, and in the music value chain, like obviously the creator, the musician itself is not the only player in the space. There's a lot of people maybe taking a cut in the music. In music NFTs, it almost seems like the musicians are the only person taking the cut, or am I wrong? Do you see a role for songwriters and all the other players in the value chain come into
I mean, like look at Kanye, right? Sometimes he's listed like 25 writers on his records or whatever, you know. There's so many things that go into records, in the process of creation to engineering to everything, that doesn't get served to the public. Like, you're looking at Kanye as a performer, and sure, he's a genius, you know, no matter what your opinions are on the guy, but it's super important that everyone gets their share. And I think, like, you know, the stat that I threw out before, it's the song itself, the recorded song, takes the majority lion's share of, you know, the total value of what comes back, and the songwriter only gets about, I think it's like 15.3% of that total value. And so there's not to go too deep into it, but there's fights in the Supreme Court of America trying to change that value split between the writers and the record rights ownership. So that's my sort of view on it all. Someone else wants to jump in.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, for a lot of what I've done as an independent artist in the NFT space is like a lot of times what I find is the visual artist, the person who creates like the cover art and the visual aspect of a release, usually gets paid out, you know, gets bought out from the beginning. And what we've done is included this visual artist in the splits for the NFT, as well as like the producer. If I work with DJ Lethal Skills and it's me and Skills, and we create the track, and I'm the MC and he's the DJ and producer, and then we have another artist creating the cover art, there's three of us in on the splits, and then we can create our audio NFT with the splits already assigned to each person at the percentage that we all agree upon, and then put that like also on Emanate, where you can add your percentages, on DAORecords, where you can put your percentages as well. And I think this is a beautiful thing, because these percentages, like, they get automated, and when an NFT gets sold, they get split and sent out to each party automatically. So I think this is like a great thing, whereas like a record label would have to absorb the cash first, and then it would take some time for them to process and then send out individual payments to each person. Like this is the beautiful thing about the blockchain, is we can automate all of these splits, and that's what really excites me about this, and what we're doing with DAORecords. Like, this is like a really awesome part of Web3.
Totally.
Yeah,
and like, on the topic of that, sorry, like, okay, the incentive to hold on to the money by some of the record labels is that incentive. Like, they put that money in and they grow it, and they grow that for them, and then they'll pay out in like very, very long time periods, and they don't give the profit that they make on top of that to the artists. They keep it for themselves. So anyway, it's just an interesting thing with automated payments and contracts, like, just to have that free flow and transparency. It's such an incredible, powerful thing.
Yeah, well, I want to add, we also sort of allow for collaborative splits, automatic routing in the smart contract, right? So I think it's great that everyone's doing that. Also visual artists, the producers and songwriters. I just wanted to quickly make a tangential note, which I think on your sort of question about the different parties involved. Traditionally, the song is regarded to have like two elements, right? Like the publishing, the songwriting, and the recording. I think a better heuristic right now is that really it's like there's three elements to it now, right? You have sort of the IP, right, which is the intellectual property, both publishing and recording goes there. Then you have the object, right, which originally was probably the better way to understand is the vinyl record, like a thing you hold. It's not the IP, it's not the song. It's like a thing you hold. That I think is where we're sort of trying to work on, is what kind of musical objects make sense. And then you have the consumable, right, like the thing you hear, the sort of recording that plays in the radio or in a streaming service. And I think there's innovation on all three verticals, right? So both on the IP side, Vandal, I believe, like obviously the record side's there. We're working more on the object side, and then Jimi and other players are also working on sort of like the last vertical. So I think it's really interesting to see different ways of innovating and experimenting and iterating on these different aspects, and they're becoming more apparent, right? The way that they're different, and different monetizations and different creative outputs as well.
Yep. It's interesting you brought up, because it almost seems like I mean, music has changed and IP stays IP. I mean, it can be sold, the rights, the back catalog can be sold, and then very little people buy vinyl. I mean, I used to buy CDs and cassettes when I was younger, but these days that market is gone, right? So it almost seems that the token is like the representation of the object you should talk about, and then the streaming platforms, the Spotify and all. It almost seems like they're the radio of the yesteryears, like people used to listen a lot and get paid. But I guess the interesting thing is, what does the object, the NFT these days, does it represent? Does it represent just a copy of a record, or does it also represent the IP? Do you kind of bundle the IP and into the object as well, and that becomes very interesting if it does get bundled in there?
Yeah, that's a slippery slope, really. But I think it's really up to the artist to decide what they want to do. I've seen artists like put out NFTs where they give like complete rights to anybody who purchases it, and there's so many different ways you can release an NFT. Like you can even think about it for like a sync and licensing, where you say, okay, you purchase this NFT at this amount, you get to use it like once or commercially, and you have the rights for it that way. Like I think that it opens up a lot of opportunities for not only the creative use cases of NFTs by artists, but also by labels, by distributors. And I think it's like we're still so early that all of us are really experimenting on how this works. And I'm a bit of a contrarian, because I don't really kind of like follow the rules of the traditional music industry. I kind of like go against them in a lot of ways, and I think that in that respect, like allowing the artists the freedom to choose what they want to do with their IP, I think is extremely important. And to know that they can even like fractionalize the ownership of their IP, like, buy the NFT, put it in a vault, get a fungible token in return, fractionalize that ownership, put it on an exchange, create a liquidity pool, do all kinds of crazy shit around that, and I think these are the type of experiments that are going to create the products of the future for artists and by artists.
Yeah, like we launched our beta platform yesterday, actually, and one of the things that we deployed was this. Yeah, thanks. It's been awesome. Well, what we've done now is made NFTs streamable, right? And you can also put like access around that. So there's two examples I'll quickly talk about. The first one, to your point of what do these things look like? Can they be collectibles, or is it like a rights thing? I mean, yeah, like Vandal said, it could be either, and it should be up to the artist for sure. And I think when he said slippery slope, there's still some pretty gray areas around the fractional stuff, like on the larger scheme of things. However, let's talk about the collectible side of things. Say there's 25 copies of a track minted. So what we've done on Emanate is put up a gate so that you need to own that NFT to actually stream it on the platform. So it's like a kind of access thing. And like one of the things I've been thinking about, just to further that a little bit, on the DJ side of things, like if the equipment that the DJ was playing to perform the music on, you could plug in your MetaMask or whatever, and it would read your record library, and it could tell you what records that you own or have been given or gifted or traded to have permission to play that to an audience. I think if hardware can integrate that kind of stuff as well, it would be super interesting. And I don't think it's that far off. And so, yeah, the other thing that we saw, actually Skills, I think it was his genius. So shout out again, brother. But essentially we deployed this functionality for this NFT access on our platform. And what one guy, I think it was Kane Mayfield, came and did, it was dropped an EP, and he attached like a visual NFT that he's been selling to his community. To, if you own that, you can unlock and listen all the tracks in that particular EP. So yeah, there's like, it is all experimentation, like Vandal sort of mentioned, but you know, I think we all here on this call, what I love and what I love to see, and what I haven't been seeing enough of, is like it getting shown in these sort of interviews and showcases. Like, we're putting our money where our mouth is, as well as having these kind of crazy experimental ideas, you know?
Just one thing
Interesting to hear,
add.
like, sorry. Yep, go ahead.
It's interesting. You mentioned sort of, you know, tapes and CDs. What we've seen in the last 7 years is a crazy increase in vinyl purchases, right? People want objects. People want ways to signal patronage. People want ways to signal identity to their friends. People want something they can hold that like it's dear to them and that they can touch, right? So, you know, our thesis is that this can be recreated digitally, right? Like token gating is one of the things we're exploring. For example, different sort of things that this thing can, I call it vinyl steroids, right? Like it's different things that we can unlock that are only possible in digital domain. Obviously, the IP side, as both Jimi and Vandal talked about, is still legally difficult and gray. I think we will have some progress on that over the next few years, hopefully unlock even more things. But at this stage, yeah, we're focusing on the object, and we're trying to sort of, you know, clarify that.
Got a question from one of the community listening into this call. I guess this one, maybe Vandal, you kind of briefly talk about it earlier at the start. Like, I mean, this question is always well and good for like large and medium-sized artists that have their fan base, and they can kind of utilize the fan base to kind of buy the NFTs. But most artists, like 99% of artists, have small undeveloped fans to pull the fan base. So if you were a small-time artist just starting out and interested in participating in the music NFT space, like how would you advise these artists to compete or build their fan base in this music NFT realm?
I would recommend the artists to learn about DAOs, and I would suggest that the artists form a DAO and invite their fans to be a member of the DAO, and that they can use the DAO then to distribute their music to their community and have their community actively involved in the creation of their music, as well as the ownership of the music. And I think there's a lot of experimentation that can go on in this sort of DAO community space, because it's like Web3 enables the artists to basically take control of their entire ecosystem and their career. And I think that not only making use of the various platforms that are out there for them to release their NFTs, but also to gather their fan base and onboard them. Because if you're the first person to onboard somebody into the ecosystem, they're going to remember you. They're going to be like, hey, yeah, Vandal onboarded me, you know, he's like, help me out, do this and that, you know. And I think this is like it's a big deal, because a lot of people don't know how to get involved in this space. And as an artist, if you have a product and your product is an NFT, you know, to go along with your other products that might be out there in Web 2, you know, you have the opportunity now to build your community, your core community, and onboarding, I think, is one of those ways that is like a really strong point. It's like the glue to bring people in and to reward them, as well as to include them into ownership as well.
So maybe I want to. I mean, we're running up to. We have last 10 minutes for this session today. But before we last two questions, I suppose. First one is if I'm most of us listening in, we're not musicians, right? But we may have interest in NFTs. What advice would you give to someone interested in buying his or her first music NFT? Like, how do you choose the artist? Where do you find them? What is a fair price to pay? Maybe basically any general advice, I suppose, on music NFTs, on collecting your first music NFTs.
I think buy something you like. You can't go wrong with that. Like, there's, everyone knows what's happening in the last couple of years, right? It's really easy to get caught up in the sort of greed cycle. And you're like, I'll buy this thing. It looks like it's hyped. I'm going to resell it for 3 times the price tomorrow, even if I don't like it so much. Usually you won't. Usually you'll sell it for 1/3 of the price and you'll be very sad. So I'd say buy something you like. Make sure that you're not. I think slowly we're going to be seeing a sort of segregation of NFTs as investment vehicles and stores of value and consumables, right? So things that you buy for the sake of patronage, for the sake of listening to these things, for the sake of owning them. I would focus on the latter, right? But if you view this as investments, even then, buy something you like, right? Support your favorite artists, support your favorite musicians, be in love with the thing you're buying, because what you're really getting is a connection with the person who made it. So please try not to follow the hype cycle. If you're good at that, like, do it. If it's your first NFT, then probably you're not very good at trading, so maybe don't follow the hype.
Yeah, I think
Jimmy, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll just like the price point at the moment of some of this stuff is pretty far out of reach for a lot of people. And I think like that needs to change. I think like, I mean, for me as a collector, or like a fan or whatever, trying to find high quality music is one of the things that is, I mean, it's out there, but like Sound XYZ doing incredible things, but it's very well contained. And yeah, price point is something that is, again, out of reach for some people. But one of the things that we're trying to combat by doing what we've done on Emanate is having like a place where you can go and just browse different NFTs and then click out to OpenSea or whatever the marketplace is. So yeah, just that's my bias where I would check, even though it's still pretty fresh. But like, I know at least, it might be $5 for a collectible or something like that rather than 500. So at least that's a good entry point that's accessible for everyone.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This is something that we're doing with DAORecords now. Like, we're about to launch our alpha on May 4th with Soundsplash, which is our 12-week, 12 NFT metaverse event series. And what we're doing is we're introducing a new sort of standardization for audio NFTs, which is in a way, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like the iTunes of audio NFTs, where you look at an album as $10 and each MP3 NFT is like 99 cents. And I don't think we've seen any standardization yet with audio NFTs or NFTs in general, because most of the audio NFTs currently today are modeled after the crypto art NFTs, where artists are allowed to sort of set the price and set the number of editions that they release. And the common question that I get asked is, how many should I release? How much should I charge? And with that, I'm like, okay, well, it makes sense for us to now kind of introduce sort of a standardization model. And with the phono route, we like to call it the phono route, which is our NFT minting system. I think that we're able to kind of introduce this sort of standardization for audio NFTs in the way that MP3s were standardized with iTunes. And this just adds to the arsenal for the artist to choose what they want to do with their NFTs. They can then go, because they own their IP, they can go then and do a one of one, and multi-layers and things on Async music, and they can go and do other stuff and release it over on Emanate and do all of the other things at the same time, as have something for the public and onboarding at a lower price point. And I think that we need to kind of like look at how we can onboard onboard fans more so
Yep.
than focus on this, trying to make mad money off of your audio NFT.
Yeah, sounds good. I like how you kind of Achilles, you put the investables versus consumables. Like that distinction it should be. It's not very clear right now. It's very weak. I guess one last question, right? So what do you see happening in the music NFT space in the next couple of years, and what do you think will be the biggest factors that will shape the industry this year? Open to all of you.
It's a big question.
Well, yeah,
go ahead.
I was gonna. Gee, I mean, we're at the sort of bottom level of all of this. I mean, we've talked about a lot of the points that this stuff's going to change the world. I think I don't want to get too ahead of myself with it all. I think like we've got a lot to focus on that's right in front of us now.
Yep.
And I just want to keep it as simple as possible so that I know this isn't the answer you're expecting, but just to simplify everything so more people can get involved that's all I really wish to see in the next however long that takes to onboard more people and get it. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree. I think at this point, like what musicians should focus on is developing their community and onboarding people. I think that like a lot of artists forget the impact of onboarding. It is a process. We are still very new in this ecosystem, and a lot of people don't understand even how to manage their own wallet. So these are the things that really make an impact when you're talking to your fan base as an artist. Focus on the onboarding aspect, and I think that with that, then you can really build a solid community around what you want to do in Web3. So this is like I guess something to speak to the artists about is really just look at how you can build your community as opposed to like throw an NFT out there and expect people buy it or whatever. Just build your community.
I'd say that what we'll see this year is sort of the value proposition for music NFTs, particularly on the consumable side. Especially we're seeing like lower gas fees and more interesting ways distribution will become more apparent in the same way that visual NFTs were last year and the year before. And secondly, I think over the sort of longer period, we'll see a more seamless and congenial integration between the tooling that Web3 provides us with the traditional methods of communicating between artists and fans. They're rolling the labels there, they're rolling the streaming services there. I am optimistic enough to hope that this will be, a fairly interesting and complicated and granular structure that nonetheless will be net benefited for both musicians and fans. I think that we will unlock a lot of value over the next few years.
All right. Thank you very much, Wendell, Jimi, Achilleas, for taking the time to share your knowledge on music NFTs today to our audience at CoinGecko. It's been really insightful. I definitely learned a lot from you guys. Really appreciate it. And also thank you KuCoin for sponsoring this meetup. So thank you a lot. And everyone, thanks everyone for listening in to the CoinGecko meetup. There's over 2,500 of you listening in. So it's been awesome to have all of you. So thank you very much, and see you next month when we have our next meetup.
Thanks so much, all. Talk soon.
Thank you.
Peace.
Thanks for having me.
Ciao.
Hello everyone! It's so good to be back! GeckoCon NFTs Gone Wild was a blast, and we can't wait to up the ante with, wait for it, GeckoCon, the decentralized future. We have a treat planned for you to welcome the advent of Web3. Decentralization is more than a buzzword. It's the future of World Wide Web, with the mission of putting the power of the internet in the hands of the people. Just like last year, we're gonna bring together thought leaders and innovators from across the globe to bring you insights into the creative economy, finance, governance, business, and more in our multi-metaverse event spanning 2 days. You can expect premium content and discussions in a series of keynotes, panel discussions, and workshops. Be sure to book your tickets. For more updates, visit our website. Hope to see you there.